Oh, how do I know if this is even on?
You have to click the go live button.
Okay, I did that. All
Okay, so
right.
then
You know what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look at my YouTube channel from here and just see if it's working. This is my first time doing this.
that's all right.
Yeah. All right. So while I'm doing that, hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode. I'm really excited to introduce Eric, who I always want to call Taylor because of the Taylor to you.
Yeah.
Um, Eric, would you tell us what got you interested in astrology?
Oh my goodness. You're turning the tables back on me, my friend. I love it. Um, well, are we live on Memorex? Did you check? Are we
I'm
live?
checking right now.
Okay, well, you check.
What's
Well,
Memorex? What's that?
oh, that's an old cassette tapes, Memorex. Live on Memorex. Yeah, it's like an old saying and stuff, a commercial. So I'm a 70s baby, it's like, hey. But I I grew up knowing that I was a Virgo, my sister was a Libra, my mom was a Taurus, my dad was an Aries.
Mm.
Um, I had interest in astrology really the whole journey. When I
Mm.
got into college, I purchased this huge astrology book that was like the Bible of astrology. I don't remember the title, but it was hundreds and hundreds of pages. And so it would have in there the deacons, but they called it 1, 2, and 3. And it would
Mhm.
be like a Virgo 2 is good with a Cancer 3 for relationships. A
Mm.
Virgo 2 is good with a Capricorn 1 for work. All this stuff. And I read mine, and I'm a second deacon, and they called it the week of the enigma. And when I finished reading it, Anjani, I was like looking around, looking up, and I'm like, who in the hell have been recording and watching my life, and who knows me like this?
Wow.
And what was so crazy, I've never done it, and I have to admit, and I feel bad, but I've always wanted to do it, and I still might one day as a professional actor. I was going to do a one-man show titled Eric, the Energetic Enigma. Because I consider myself an enigma, wrapped up in an anomaly and all that stuff, right? And
Yeah.
so when I saw that, I was like, what? Like, that's crazy. Um, and then, I mean, I got to be totally honest. I, you, I, I learned astrology being a single young man, college, University of Maryland, and definitely used it for dating. So I knew every sign, and I knew like erogenous zones and how to like talk to different ladies, depending on their sign and this and that. And I mean, I was never, I don't want to say I was a player because I was always nice, and any ex-girlfriend could tell you like I never disrespected a woman in my life. But I definitely knew how to, you know, work it. So that astrology knowledge, I mean, it was crazy because I felt like, oh my gosh, like this is almost unfair. Like I know like exactly what to say. Like it was crazy and it was working. So I was just like, okay. And maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it was just my Scorpio rising and Venus on the ascendant, but who knows, right?
Mhm.
I didn't know that at the time because I didn't know my chart. I didn't know forever I was a Capricorn moon and Scorpio rising. And I just knew I was a Virgo sun. That's it. So I was reading more about this book and learning all this different information. And then I put it down in 99 because I went to California as an actor. I was a professional actor since like 95 in New York City, doing television, film, and theater. And in 99, I went to California to spend time with my buddy and then also my half sister. My half sister was born. Oh, you switched the. Okay. Born,
I'm just doing all kinds of things right now,
that's all
Eric.
right. Good for you
Keep
with a girl.
talking.
It's all good. Are we live on YouTube though? Is that's
We're
the
live on YouTube. I'm
there we
trying
go.
to enable the chat box right now. Keep telling me the story about
Okay,
how
I'll
you
keep
got
telling you
into
the
this.
story. And anybody watching, hello out there. So I became a born again Christian
Oh.
in California. Started going to church with my sister, and growing up, my father grew up Baptist, my mother Catholic, but we didn't have like deep, deep religion in the home. and I lost my father. My father was murdered when I was at the age of 6, which you can see in my birth chart in my 11th house. So I kind of put the astrology down, obviously, when I became a born again Christian, because, that's what they tell, oh, God, it's a sin and da 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 and all this stuff. But even when I did, and I was like, on fire, like I was on fire Christian and going to church all the time. And I used to go to Times Square Church in New York City on 50th and Broadway. For those who know, they know. And it was non-denominational. I used to go to Baptist church sometimes, but I loved it. And I still love the Lord. I love Jesus. And, that really helped me when I was sick in a coma. And I'll get to that. But, I got back into astrology through being sick. I got valley fever in 2013 and it didn't go to my lungs. And it's only in 5 or 6 states, California, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, whatever, all these states, right? And it's like from the soil, I guess it's like rat or pig feces or whatever they say in the soil. And so basically a gust of wind came. I went to go open my front door looking for the cable man, and a gust of wind came just like Ghostbusters and literally was just like and like mashed me in my nose and mouth. It was literally, no exaggeration, like Ghostbusters. It was such an invasion. I closed the door, told my wife, I said, I think I'm going to get sick. The next day, I had a doctor's appointment. I went and I wasn't feeling good while I was there. I basically wound up in the ER because I started feeling really crazy. And I was just like thinking, I was like, well, I don't want to be one of those stubborn, pig-headed men that winds up having a heart attack at home in his bed and dying. I was like, my wife said, you want to go to ER? I was like, yeah, I think maybe we should. Because I'm not like a panicky hospital type person. But I was just like, yeah, I'm having numbness go down my whole left arm. I was short of breath. Like, it was crazy. So I went there. You know what these doctors told me? This is so dumb in Western medicine. They basically was like, they did a EKG and something else. They're like, oh, it's just stress and anxiety because my wife was pregnant with the twins at the time. And I said, wait. I said, no, I told you what happened to me, this whole invasion in my body. I was like, I'm not stressed or anxious about anything. I was like, I got 2 other kids at home. I was like, my life, I've been through way more than this. I said, this ain't nothing. So, needless to say, they're supposed to check your lungs. Later on, I wound up going somewhere else to check my lungs, didn't see anything. So then I was basically done with Western medicine. They said, you're not sick. My body was producing mucus as if I had the flu every day of my life, and it was going through the entire body, through the lymphatic tract. My face, I'm 5'11". When I got married in 2008, I was, let's say, 187 pounds. So I went to like about, 195. Let's say right now I'm 197. Still decent weight for me or whatever. I could, get to 185. Who cares? Whatever, right? 190. But at my worst, I got so sick with all the mucus and fluid, I went up to 240 pounds, Anjani. And I've been skinny my whole life. I mean, when I was acting in New York City, I was doing print modeling and acting. I was like 170, 175. So 240 pounds for a 5'11" man. And it was all fluid and mucus. And God's medicine helped me. I finally, through my acupuncturist, my wife met somebody, recommended this homeopathic, naturopathic doctor, went to his office, and I got garlic IVs, diflucanazole, which is the antifungal medicine, because valley fever is a fungus, and then leeches, God's first medicine, leeches on my body. Leeches have a medicine in them called the Hiragine, a homeopathic medicine, and they like basically suck on you, and they suck stuff out and inject their stuff in, and then you secrete out blood and fluid for about 15 to 20 hours. And my oldest son didn't want to go to bed that night. He sees me bleeding. I'm like bleeding all over the bed, like just sitting there. Because I put it like all over my body. I shaved the back of my head. I had them. And I got so much stuff out of me. It was crazy. And that experience, and then me researching and got into medical astrology and then watching more astrology videos. And then I started to really look. And then I learned my chart. And then I was seeing things. And then I was just like, you know what? I've been a relationship coach since I was like 13 years old, always giving people advice about love and relationships and this and that. And then I started to investigate the astrology. And then I was like, found my astrology guru. And then I started studying and taking classes, reading books and watching videos, researching on YouTube, researching Google, astrology articles, newspapers, anything I could find. And but the impetus was the sickness and sort of looking at medical astrology. And I found a great astrology teacher, and then I've just studied and studied and studied. And like you were saying before on my channel, I still study. I still take classes. I still, because I feel like you're the constant student, and it's about keeping up and mastering something, or the journey or process of it, but also just becoming, a lifelong learner. And that's who I am. I mean, I have Jupiter. So I guess I should just say, so I have Scorpio rising, and I have Jupiter, Venus, Jupiter, Neptune on the ascendant. And the Jupiter, it makes me I love knowledge, wisdom, say like I am the guru. I am the 1-3 generator in human design. So it's like I've got to go through it, experience it, and then share it and teach it to the people. So I've been doing that my whole darn life. But I was hooked when I was in a class online, one of 3 or 4 Americans, 15 people, had people in Thailand, Australia, all over Canada. And my teacher, she had looked at my chart, and she said, "Can I use it as an example for the class?" And I said, "Sure." And she broke down my 11th house, and it literally described how my father was murdered when I was 6 years old. And it was like a mic drop. Like we're on Zoom, everybody was like, and the gasp of air, and people were like, "I'm so sorry." I'm like, "It's okay. It's okay. I know it's my life. I lived it. It's okay." But it was that, like, it's that literal in my chart, and described it to a T. The Mars, the Mercury, the Pluto, the South Node, my Sun, Black Moon, Lilith, all in Virgo in my 11th house. And so, after that, like, I couldn't make up my chart. I couldn't make up that reality. So then there was no more questioning astrology. And I've been hooked ever since.
Okay. All right. Yeah, okay. So that's how you got into astrology, and I figured out that I can't do anything with the chat box. So are you able to do anything with the chat box? I can see the chats here. So Irene,
Hi,
she's
Irene.
asking, yeah, hi. I can't wait to hear what we have to say. Okay, so let me go ahead and do this now. This is gonna be the flow of the video for anybody who's watching the replay or watching it live. We got the introduction. I actually wanted to hear a little bit more. I would like to direct a little bit more questions about you, Eric.
Okay.
And then I'm going to hear a little bit from Eric. We're going to cover the new moon, and the new moon is conjunct one of the royal stars, Aldebaran, or some people say Aldebaran. It's one of the fixed what is known as the 4 royal stars. This one would be the watcher of the east. They all go along with the 4 directions.
Mm.
Um, so there's a little bit I want to talk about. I say Aldebaran. Some people say Aldebaran,
Is
but
that where Spock was from?
excuse me.
Is that where Spock was from?
I have no
Oh, no,
clue
he's a
about
Vulcan.
anything
I'm sorry.
related to TV or like
I'm joking. I'm talking about Star Trek. Spock.
I don't know
I'm
about
sorry.
it. I don't
Yeah,
know
that's
Star
all right.
Trek. I don't know Star Wars. I don't know any movies or show. I
Oh,
don't
girl,
know
you better know about Star Wars. That's based on a
none of
real
it.
story.
None of it. None of it.
Okay. All right.
So,
That's cool.
I'm going to talk about that. And then I do want to talk a little bit about Chiron because the Jupiter Mars conjunction, both Jupiter and Mars are going to be touching in with Chiron,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is going to be a huge thing for us in 2022 and 2023. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as it relates to the Gemini new moon. So mostly we're going to talk about the new moon. Let me just get a little cushiony on both sides of it though. So another thing I want to talk about with Eric before we get into the specifics of this chart, you were in a coma. Like that to me is such a huge, like you've had a very interesting life. And
Yeah.
before we got on here, we were chatting about what I call the big T traumas and the little T traumas. So the big T traumas are things that it's like people go like this. Their jaw just completely drops and they're like,
My
So
life is a jaw dropper, basically.
sitting in a lot. So I'm an herbalist and an astrologer, and I've been working in the healing arts for over 20 years now.
Wow.
And one of the things about working in the healing arts is sitting in a lot of circles for classes, for doing plant medicine ceremony, um, just the whole learning educational experience. It is a circle. It's a healing these for years and years. And
Right.
people who have, everybody has some sort of a trauma. This is
Yeah.
Chiron in your chart
We all have it.
explains about what your traumas were, what areas of life they impacted, and how it relates to your inner architecture by looking at the other the aspects to the other planets. So big T is the kind of trauma that is life or death. And it's no trauma is better or worse or more we should feel some certain way or we should that. It's relative to your story, to your Chiron story, to your life story. Your trauma is relative to your story. So what I've experienced is sitting in circles and hearing about people's trauma is like when I tell my story, people's face is like, which further damages it's like further traumatizing because then just like Eric said, we're over here, it's okay guys, don't worry, now I'm comforting you from you hearing my story.
Right, right.
And like this is my lived experience. So first thing is that this is a Chiron thing. So we all like we've got this ephemeris, my handy dandy Chiron ephemeris. And what I do is go looking, when was your first Chiron square, your first Chiron opposition, your second square, and then the Chiron return happens somewhere between 48 and 52 years old.
Yeah.
But so everybody gets to that return at the same time, which Eric is in right now. And this is what I want to ask you about with, as your Chiron return became what I say is the initiation point when it first goes exact. Then the thing is, we don't have like Saturn return. It's always going to be everybody between 28 and 30. It's always going to be 28 years, 28 and a half, 28. I
Right.
forget how it's like 28 point something or other.
Right, right.
But with Chiron, it's not like that. So what I find, Chiron is one of my focal points in astrology because of the healing arts, and that the only reason I do astrology is for healing. So okay, the
And
people
that's
who have
that's so
had
noble, very noble of you, Anjani.
um, the people who have their first Chiron square around age 6, there's a specific kind of big T trauma that these people will experience. Then the people who have their first Chiron square 12 or 21 or something like teenage years or early 20s, these people will have different, I won't call it a little t because I can't say that for sure, but
Right.
their experience of healing and the necessity for doing healing work is different. People that have it at an early age, our impetus to do healing work is a matter of life or death survival. So these people tend to be much more intense, much more dedicated, committed, devoted to the healing arts because of the fact that they had this traumatic experience before they were completely Saturnized, before they hit 7 years old. They
Yeah.
hadn't fully materialized yet, and they're already experiencing this otherworldly type of energy, which Chiron represents.
And that was me.
So, okay, can you like maybe give me like 5 to 7 minutes? I want to hear, what happened around age 6 for you, and then your initiation at your Chiron return, just if you wouldn't mind.
So, just so everyone knows, as a Scorpio rising, my Chiron is in Aries, 6th house, and 9 degrees. So before I turned 7, I was 6 years old, New York City, in Harlem. My father was murdered. He was supposed to be going to meet my mother for dinner one night and never made it. And he was murdered on 110th Street and Morningside Drive in Harlem. He worked in Harlem. My mother taught in Harlem, Harlem family. And at the time, we lived on Upper West Side. And I think I remember that night, my sister and I were playing Scrabble. It was a Friday night. And I just saw police sirens outside. And I go running downstairs and they come to the door. My mother sends me upstairs. And I'm like telling my sister, Elise, I said, Lacey, because we saw the cops. And I said, the police are talking to mommy. And, my sister was 11, so she might have known or thought something. I was an innocent little baby at 6. I didn't know anything. And my mom proceeded to come upstairs and tell my sister and I that our father was shot and killed. And I remember my sister crying and hitting my television. And I said, Lacey, don't break the TV, And I didn't, looking back, I guess I can realize, because I've done all this healing work with Chiron and myself, even before I was a professional astrologer, but I didn't realize what that meant, I think, at the time. And so that initial trauma definitely was stored in the subconscious mind in the 12th house, where a lot of things go when kids have trauma. I did at that time at 6 feel responsible to take care of my mother and my sister. And then I swore that my father was 45 when he died. And there was this imprint that I didn't know if I'd make it past 45, and that I thought that I would be shot as well. And I say that because it's going to fast forward to the Acoma story. But I felt like my will to live got this Aries jolt in it. And I was like, I'm here to 100. Nothing will take me out. Nothing will stop me. And then, fast forward, my mom, she was 36 with 2 kids. My dad was everything. They were married for 16 years. She went from her father's house to my father's house. She was distraught, and she admitted to me later on in life that that day part of her died. My father was her world. They were 9 years apart. He was 9 years older. And she didn't really know what to do. My mother got taken advantage of, got remarried. My stepfather was not nice. Now his family is my family, and his family was great. My aunts, my cousins, like everybody, and totally accepted me. And his family, he actually used to work for my father. So his family and my family were already family and connected and entangled. But he, didn't know how to be a father and a husband and all that stuff. And a lot of abuse. My mom got out of it. But the next trauma was, I guess, barely a year later. My uncle, my father's younger brother, shot my mother in the head and left her for dead. My mother, God rest her soul, got up with her brains oozing out of her head, got in her red lipstick, cherry red Mercedes-Benz, and drove 9 to 11 blocks in Harlem to my father's candy store that my stepfather was at and running at the time. She parked, went in, they saw her, she dropped, they rushed her to Columbia Presbyterian, where they saved my mother's life 2 times, and Bill Clinton too. So I was born there, so I love Columbia Presbyterian in New York City, up in Washington Heights. And she we were brought to the hospital to see her, which was because they didn't know if she was going to make it. And, and I don't blame whoever made that choice. I think it was my godmother or my sister's godmother at the time. But it was very traumatic for me because I saw my mother all bandaged up and she couldn't talk. And I just, ever since that day, I don't like hospitals. So that was right before 6 and right before 8. So 7 and 8 years old. Then I think before the end of 9, I found out that I had an eye disease that I got inherited from my mom, sex linked through my grandfather, who was totally blind. And it's called RP, retinitis pigmentosa. So it has me legally blind in my right eye. So, pretty poor vision. But that's where the Chiron's at 9 degrees. So it's weird because it's like, yeah, that was pretty traumatic because they told me at that point that I would be totally blind at 21 years old. And I'm now almost 52, and thank God I can still see. But that's what they put in my head and told me. They didn't really know and yada, yada, yada. But that was really traumatic, right? So, I mean, I could have probably multiple Chirons at like 6, 7, 8, 9. So I before 10 years old, I don't know. And it's so weird because I had a good friend. We're still friends, but he said to me, because, I told him my story and he was just like, Eric, I don't understand. You're the happiest, nicest, most well-adjusted, normal person I've ever met in my life. But you went through freaking hell. How did you do that? And I said, and I realize now as a professional astrologer, I think it's those two benefics and Neptune on the ascendant, that Neptune really is probably what brought in the eye disease, because Neptune's disease and the Chiron's on Aries, and Aries is the head and the eye. But it's also, it made me be in this fantasy world where I was like a savant as a child. So I love sports. When I was a little boy, I played every sport and I was a very good athlete. But because of my vision, I had to slowly retire from each sport. And it really pissed me off because I was a very good athlete. But then I wound up going to track and field and became a track star and got all these medals. And, as a freshman, I made it to the city finals, and high school senior year, we won the championship and qualified for Penn relays, all this stuff, triple jumping, long jumping, 400, 800, whatever. But the Neptune, I think, put me into this place where I would write murder mysteries in junior high school, and I got into Shakespeare and this and that. And I was always, even though I had a sibling and had a bunch of cousins and a lot of friends, I was always in my own world. But the sports was my connection to my father in heaven because he was a big sports fan. And so it was like my way to connect to him while he wasn't here. And I truly was an expert. So grown adults would come to my house, dating my mom or just friends or whatever, and they would come to me to find out the sports information. I knew every stat, every player, football, baseball, basketball, the standing. I mean, I was just like kid, and people would. And now I look back and I know I must have been just like this cute little weird kid. Like, how does this kid know all this stuff? But adults were fascinated by me. Like, I would literally control the room. And my whole life has been very weird in the sense that I tell people I'm 51 now, and I've had some success as an actor, never rich and famous, but as in the Screen Actors Guild and Actors Equity, got my picture in the New York Times, did print modeling in a magazine in Japan, and television, film, met different people. But I was a working actor and I paid my bills, right? But I was famous as a little child. So summers I would go play basketball up in Martha's Vineyard and stay at my aunt's house with all my cousins, and adults, and a coach gave me a nickname of Big E, B-I-G, quotations around E, the fifth letter, Big E, named after a basketball player named Elvin Hayes, right? And it was because I was so little and I could barely reach the hoop, and I had a big mouth and big glasses, and I was cute and, and all this stuff. And everybody knew me. And I would be at the beach and adults would come up to me and be like, "You're Big E, right?" And I'd be like, "Yeah." And they'd be like, "Well, when's your next game? I want to come watch you play." And it was just the weirdest thing because like wherever I went, that type of stuff happened. And then even in New York City, like friends from school, and they were like, "Oh my," see me outside the movie theater, "Oh my God, you're Eric Taylor." And I'm like, "Yeah, hi." Like, and so, you know what I mean? But now looking back at it as an astrologer, I don't want to give the credit because it's all God, but it's like, it's almost like that was the Venus, that was the Neptune on the ascendant. You know what I mean? That was the magnetic energy of the Scorpio and that Mars. And so it's just really fascinating to me, my life and rewinding it back and then correlating it with the transits and the planets and
So it's just
astrology. It's
fascinating.
mind blowing.
My life. And
Yeah. So, that's really it in that sense, in terms of that Chiron experience. Fast forward to the sickness and valley fever. I got COVID. It was a total accident and just trying to be good parents and throwing a birthday party for our twins. And COVID came through and, just got our whole family sick. But unfortunately, because I had the valley fever, it hit me pretty hard. And wound up in the hospital August 29th. My mother went in August 27th. She was actually doing pretty well. So I thought she was going to be fine and they were going to send her home. And I was like, but my wife's still sick. She can't go home yet. And, I'm in the hospital bed and I felt like I was getting sicker every day because of their protocols. They did not give me the monoclonal antibodies, which they should have given me and they didn't give to me. And then they were giving me steroids, and steroids doesn't work well with valley fever. And even though I told them, and so I was getting sicker and sicker. And September 6th, my wife got a phone call, 11 something at night, saying that your husband, his vitals, his organs were failing. And we rushed him to the ICU. And we had to, we're going to have to intubate him, and death is imminent. Then they call back an hour later, he's in the ICU, put him on the ventilator, and this and that. I was literally in a coma for 40 days, and I didn't even wake up from the first hospital in the ICU. They sent me to the second hospital in Phoenix, and where I had the trach and the intubator and all this stuff, and they were starting to take away different medicine, and they're telling my wife he's going to start to move around and flitter and eyes and stuff wasn't happening. And then she was like, "Is he okay?" And then they did a CAT scan on my brain. Brain was functioning. They took off another medicine and they're like, "He's got nothing left. He should be waking up." Nothing was happening. So they did an MRI on my brain and it was still functioning. And, and I tell people now, it's like, yeah, I was sleeping because I was battling Satan. I was in spiritual warfare, coma. There was not one day of darkness. I was in a different dimension and I was going through it, dealing with torture, dealing with fears, insecurities, like feeling like people were trying to kill me. And in a coma, so back to the Mars and the Aries and the shooting, I died 3 times while I was in a coma. And one of the times I was shot in my chest, 3, 4, and it was weird. I could feel like the bullets and whatever. But one time when I died, I astral traveled to my house. And I had an opportunity to go and see my 13-year-old son 5 years in the future. And I didn't choose that. And then I just went to the sofa and I saw one of my twins, my son Jackson. He was in 4K color technology. And my wife and her business associate, Taria, the two of them, I could see them like at the table and on the back porch and talking. And they were like in 90s VHS color and technology. It was wild. And Don't you know the first thing I did when I woke up and they gave me the voice box? I said to my wife, I was like, and I'm trying to talk over the trach before I got the voice box, and she was like, "You're gonna hurt your voice." I was like, I'm like, whatever. But then I got the voice box, and I was like, thank you, God, I can communicate with these people, right? Because my hands were so weak, I couldn't write stuff down. I mean, it was just, I mean, they put restraints on me one night. And I was so pissed, Anjani, because I was trying to, I didn't have a band for my hair. My locks were growing like crazy. And I'm like trying to wipe the sweat off. And they thought I was trying to pull out my trach. So they put restraints on me. And I'm like, you freaking idiots, turn on the lights and look at the sweat dripping on my eyebrow. I'm trying to wipe the sweat off and you're not helping me. They thought I was trying to pull out. I was so hot. Oh my God. So I just like went back to sleep. Like I couldn't deal with it because I was so angry and frustrated. So I think I probably just like slept another couple of days. And anyway, so I went through hell and back, and it was something. But I'm here. I am a better man, a better husband, a better father, a better human, a better astrologer, and a better relationship coach and healer from what I went through in this experience. And it was my Chiron return, and the sun in transit was hitting. I was, while I was in a coma, I celebrated my birthday. And my friends showed up in a big way. They had a Facebook page for me, and they sent my wife so many gift card, Uber Eats, and all this stuff. Like when I came home from the hospital, she still had Uber Eats like in the phone. Like she didn't have to cook like not one night. And it was just the outpouring of love. And I hate to say it because sometimes you're like, hey, can I get some of that love? Like I'm awake and I'm alive and I'm okay, And I get it. The human nature of people, when they think that you're gone or they're losing you, people want to step up and extend their love, and that's when it's needed. But sometimes that old saying, right? Sometimes I feel like as human beings, some folks need their flowers when they're like alive. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's such a weird thing, but I'm so grateful and so humbled and thankful because I felt the prayers. And I know for myself, I literally called on God, Jesus, Mommy, Alana, Elijah, William, Jackson, Mateus. And I kept saying it and kept saying it. And it got me out of some tricky situations while I was in a coma. But I asked my wife, was Taria at the house while I was in a coma? And she said, yeah, how did you know that? And I said, because I astral traveled to the house and I was there. I saw her and I saw you talking. And I saw Jackson and Jackson saw me. He came over, gave me a hug, and then walked off. But he told his older brother, William, and my wife, the daddy came to the house. Daddy's going to be okay. And that kid's like a spiritual powerhouse. So it was something. And that was my Chiron return.
All right.
Not your average Chiron return, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, I have heard a lot of really intense Chiron returns, honestly. Like, I
Nah.
mean, maybe I haven't heard all the details like this, but Chiron return seems to be a lot of unexpected, strange illnesses, and it's a time for us to really integrate all the undigested wounds that we hadn't been able to process because we were too distracted by life or in a hurry or going into, oh, hi, Ayano. Astro Heal Up. Ayano, are you? Oh, I feel like you are just going into your Chiron return. This is Ayano.
Hi, Ayana.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
I'm
Ayano,
very
just
cool.
put it in the chat box there if you want to. I don't really remember the exact degree of your Chiron, but for some reason I feel like it is this year or it's next year. I'm not sure. But okay, so yeah, I have heard really, really, yep. Okay. Yeah. I have heard a lot of like anytime somebody starts telling me something, these these different types of viral infections. What's this one that people were getting from mosquitoes? Is like yellow fever or something like this?
No, people were getting the oh my God, it's the I'm
I can't
forgetting.
who it's okay. I can't remember either,
Well,
but
no, but let me tell you. So when I was in the hospital, so many people were getting it. And it was worse than what I went through because it affects the brain. And some people, it causes crazy brain swelling. And
You're talking about meningitis, but I'm not talking about
no, I'm not
meningitis,
talking about
but
meningitis. I'm talking about the mosquitoes.
the
That's what it was
mosquito.
doing to people. Yes.
What's it called? It's not
Um,
yellow fever.
nope. It's oh my gosh. Oh, my brain is just I
So
know.
it's like usually people will start talking about things that are not able to be detected on medical. Oh my God, my brain right now too. What the
Yeah.
hell?
It's the
There's
Mercury in retrograde, but let
You
me
know
tell
how
you.
that there's like a graph for your medical things?
Uh-huh.
Well, during Chiron return, it doesn't show up on their graphs. Like it doesn't show up that they can't say, oh, this is they can't get the diagnosis. So the reason I end up seeing these people is because they're coming to me as a last resort. So can you help me with Ayurveda? Can you help me with doing body reading, body scanning? I have a nutritional program that I work with somebody who does body scan
Mm.
via, she uses a technology that's called something I can't even remember at the moment. But anyway, I do hear a lot of these stories that you can't make this stuff up. It's like
It's
people
terrible.
it doesn't have to be terrible. It can
No, it
be,
affects everybody differently, but I'm just
yeah.
saying it was a bad case this past late summer, early fall, and so many people were in the emergency room, ICU, in the facility, the rehab, and the stories were crazy. Like it was worse than the COVID, and I went through the Delta. Now I had COVID back in January 2020 and was sick for 23 days, but it was like just got here when the news was saying, first came in March, but it was already here in January. And I got sick and it bodied me. I've had walking pneumonia, bronchitis, the flu, all that stuff. This was worse. But that was 23 days. One night I remember going to bed and I just said a prayer to God. I was like, God, please let me wake up in the morning because I could feel like a weight on my chest. But that was nothing. The Delta, I felt like it was a whole nother level. It was insane. But their protocols were basically, trying to kill me. It was, uh,
Yeah, so yeah, that's the Chiron return. I did want to touch on Ayano. Yours is actually at 16 degrees of Aries. So you're just getting into yours. It's not quite, it's two degrees away, which basically it's like you're probably feeling it now.
yeah.
But so the Chiron return, okay, so Chiron shows us where is the wound, what is the wound, and what is the medicine. So the wound and the medicine are always together. In nature, if I'm going to run into a type of poison, always the remedy is right next to it. Same thing with our wounds. If you have Chiron in Aries, this is a wound of individualism, needing to be a trailblazer, needing to be somebody who is the fight for individuality.
Well,
And
also
Chiron,
initiated, right?
excuse me?
When it's in Aries, it's also about initiating, right? Being assertive, finding your voice, being a leader, that Aries energy. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I think it's very deep. If you look at my spectrum of the 6-year-old Chiron and then the return, I lost both my parents. So that's very significant, you
Hmm.
know. And it's basically made me realize and understand about standing alone, you know,
2026.
having or
So,
living a life where neither of your parents are around, which we all go through at some point, you know.
hmm. So, okay, so Chiron is for us, it's our medicine. It's how we become our medicine. So, whenever we track where the Chiron transits are, when was your first square, your first opposition, when was the second square, there is a common thread that goes along those Chiron transits, and that thread is going to tell you what I call the Chiron story. So, your wound, the things that were traumatic and painful and hard to get through, or whatever words we want to use, there is a medicine in that. And at some point when we tell the story of our Chiron initiation, we all get Chiron initiations, 4 of them at least. But some people have more of them because, for instance, Chiron was in Pisces. I have 5 planets in Pisces. Chiron went through Pisces very slowly. So I was having Chiron initiations through a long period. So you may have Chiron initiations at different points that don't just correspond with the square and the opposition. And like this, the thing I want to say about Chiron, because Jupiter is touching in with Chiron in 2023, Mars is going to be touching in with Chiron very soon.
Yeah, in the next.
Between now and July, we're going to have Chiron in close proximity with Mars, which will be bringing up these mortal wounds, which the mortal wound is something that we may never heal. In the Chiron story, not of your Chiron story, but the story of Chiron, Chiron was the teacher, the prophet, the astrologer, the musician, the warrior. He taught all the healing arts, the sciences of being human. And whenever he needed healing, he couldn't get it because even his best students couldn't heal him. So the Chiron on your chart also is telling you what the wound that you have that may never heal. So it's a part of us that we're constantly insecure about, that we're constantly trying to band-aid up with either excuses or alcohol or sleep, or trying to avoid this wound. And the idea that I have about Chiron through
And where's
studying,
yours at? Where's your Chiron?
I have Chiron in the first house in Taurus.
Okay.
So as uh, one of the things is that people who are in the healing arts usually have some big things that led them to study this
Yeah.
because of the wound that is maybe will never heal. So it's something that we ourselves are constantly insecure about and trying to either band-aid or avoid, or like eventually, like in plants, the medicine from the wound, like when they squeeze the frogs and get that medicine out, it's like there's a way that we're able to use our story eventually, that we use our story as medicine for others
Yes.
instead of telling the story as a way of like grieving, or telling the story to
It's
get
like a
sympathy,
responsibility. That's a
something like
responsibility
this.
to heal others with our Chiron wound. And I think that, like you said, that you might not ever heal from it, but when you start to heal others, it's also healing you in the ways that you can better cope or deal with. You know what I mean? And I think it's almost like I won't say like a rite to passage, but it's something that maybe eases or soothes the wound, because there's a great responsibility with that Chiron. It's almost like that recycling back of not, like you said, not just the storytelling, but of actually helping to heal others where your Chiron wound is at. That's why the house and the sign are so important, and the degrees. Because I found, I don't know if you've noticed this, but you know, and I know one astrologer who figured this out or whatever, Robert Phoenix, but it's very true. The degrees of the Chiron tells you usually, almost all the time when I do chart readings, the age when the wound was created. And the stories that I've heard just blow me away. And so sometimes, let's say, for example, if your Chiron's at 23 degrees, you could have the wound at 5 years old or at 23 years old. And a lot of people look at Chiron as two wounds: the wound of rejection between birth and 18 months, and then the second wounding of the age of the degree. So I've seen it play out in a myriad of different ways, but usually, whatever age, whatever degree you have it on, is the age of that wound. And it blows me away. I mean, that's one of the first things when I look at a chart for someone. I ask them, well, what happened at 13 years old? And I, describe it as the emotional, physical, or spiritual wound dealing with the house and the sign. And it tells the story usually to a T. It's like chilling.
Yeah, so as we're getting ready to go into Mars and Jupiter touching in with Chiron in the sky currently, what are some of the things that you would possibly see that people could maybe kind of expect could be happening in our shared reality?
I think it depends on the individual chart for the human being in terms of where their Aries is at in their chart and where their Chiron's at natally. But for anyone that has Chiron in Aries and they're going to go through this experience the next couple of months and next year or change, I think it's an opportunity with Mars and Jupiter to, especially being in Aries, Mars at home, um, to really initiate healing and health and really trying to find your voice, your assertive energy, your maverick pioneering energy, your wound, and how then you can become almost like this spiritual warrior to heal yourself. But it's not just, I think Aries is always I am, but this is a little deeper than just I am masculine, cardinal, fire sign energy. This is more about, especially because of what's going on with the, us being between these eclipses, this is about trying to look within and what you can ascertain and learn from looking within, an investigation of self, to then extend it out to heal and assist others. I taught for 10 years with multiply severely disabled children. And I can honestly tell you that was one of the most healing experiences for me in my life, to go from the vanity of acting and always having to look prim and proper and be in great health and great shape and all this stuff and performing and being around, Harrison Ford and, Gwyneth Paltrow and all these different people, to being in the Bronx in the hood with poor, disabled, talking Down syndrome, Tourette's, autism, MR, cerebral palsy, blindness, the whole gamut, poor Black, Asian, Latino, some white kids in the Bronx. It was a Chiron experience because they were completely dependent on me, and I had to be of complete service for me, Aries 6th house, initiating service to these children. And it taught me to be a better human, a better man, and a better son, and prepared me for my mother getting a brain tumor in 2004 and taking care of her for over 17 years. So, I don't take it lightly when I look at Chiron and service and introspection and healing, and then taking it outwardly to heal others. My whole life has been about healing, and I do it through entertainment, education, inspiration. And, I think sometimes going through your own levels of trauma, pain, and crises, you can recycle that, deal with it, and then pour out the love and healing to the others. And so I think Mars and Jupiter is really having us look at what are our inner warrior, what is our beliefs and our philosophies? What is our fortune and expansion that we can pour on to others and pour out and share with others? And I think we all, as a society right now, have a great responsibility because every single human being is capable of extending a hand to help someone else. And that's a human story and a Chiron story. And I think Mars and Jupiter and Aries, in this time, with the way this story's been playing out the last 2, 3 years, that's what I'm feeling. And that's what I'm sensing that we all need to do.
Okay. So that is for Chiron, for Mars and Jupiter coming up to Chiron. You're saying like just look at your individual chart. And then what about for like all of us? Like what kinds of things do you see possibly taking place on the world stage with that transit?
Well, I think you're going to see people fighting for the individual rights. I think right now on the table, you're seeing a lot with reproductive stuff for women. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, what's been going on with all these shootings and guns, especially in this country. No
Mm-hmm.
other country in the free world has gun violence and killings and mass shootings than America. We've had only 100 and some odd days in this year and already 212 shootings. We have more
Mm-hmm.
shootings than days in 2022. It's absurd,
Mm-hmm.
right? You don't have that
Mm-hmm.
in Canada, Australia, Sweden, Great Britain. It's just, it's an American thing.
Mm-hmm.
What is wrong with us that this keeps happening? What
Mm-hmm.
is, and when I think about Chiron and Aries, Aries is literally very much also the warrior, the soldier, the fighter, the weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Mars can be, separation, death, blood, all these different things. You know, I think we're gonna have a summer of more. I don't want to say riots, but more protests. I think that's what I see in the collective. People being combative, verbally fighting, arguing, and I think people finding their individual voice to fight for their rights. Men, women, survivors of gun violence. Like, I mean, you already feel it and sense it brewing.
Mm-hmm.
And the astrology is not, the second half of 2022 is pretty intense,
Mm-hmm.
especially July to like November. Jupiter going back to Pisces between October 27th and December 20th might give us a little bit of a reprieve and stuff. But let me tell you, stay tuned. Turn to channel 0 and stay tuned because it's going to be a fiery summer. That's what I'm sensing.
What's Channel Zero?
Oh, just an expression and a joke.
Mm.
Public Enemy had that song, She Watches Channel 0. So it's an old hip hop reference, I
Okay.
always refer everything back to hip hop. I'm sorry. I'm an MC, so it's like, everything's hip hop to me. And hip
You
hop
don't have to
runs
be
the
sorry
world,
about
by the
that.
way. Hip hop does
That's
run the
cool.
world
Yep.
because it comes back from the African drum and storytelling as orators and exchanging information. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why it's been such a American powerful art form that started in the Bronx, New York,
Mm-hmm.
through Jamaica and Cool Herc and all that other stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's 85 to 90% of all advertising, marketing, commercials is run through the scope of hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
And I predicted that, by the way, in the early 90s. I was talking to one of my best friends, my Jewish brother, that we used to do a sports radio show together. And I was telling him, I said, remember, I told you back then that hip hop would run because I saw it, I knew it, just like in 1989, freshman year of college, in the fall before 1990, I told my college professor, he thought Madonna, she'd be done by 91, 92. I said, no, no, no. I said, Madonna is a culture vulture and she knows how to morph and change and become anyone and anything. And she gets the pulse of the people.
Mm-hmm.
Donna was Italian, then Puerto Rican, then African American, then Asian, then Jewish, then British. She's been everything. And she was gay. She was, you know what I mean? She immerses herself in cultures and emulates and imitates and then shares it back. But she knew how to do it in such an authentic way that it was accepted and believed. Not too many artists have been able to do that. Not the way she has.
What do you mean by culture vulture?
Well, I think culture vulture is, when you are not of a certain culture and then you kind of study it, morph into it, and try to represent it and become it, you're kind of like a culture vulture. You're not, you know what I mean? It's not your culture, but you're becoming a part of it and
Mm-hmm.
then financially benefiting from it, which is what she did.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was brilliant, I mean, but it's what she did.
Mm.
Has done that since. Not like her,
Good point.
you know.
All
But
right.
it's
Well,
so let's get to this Gemini New Moon, girl.
are you sure? I feel like we should just get like this already been an hour. I kind of want to start another one. We didn't this we spent an hour like on God
Well,
knows
we got
what.
to we got to touch on it for the people. That's what we said we were going to talk about. So,
I've been in here trying to edit the title and changing it to Chiron because we went into
oh,
we
oh my
only
God!
talked
But
about
it is coming.
Chiron.
Listen, but it is coming tomorrow. So I want to say this though: the Gemini Moon is at 9 degrees, right? And Mercury's in retrograde. And Mercury in retrograde in Taurus is trining Pluto, squaring Aquarius and Saturn, Pluto and Capricorn. And it's also talking about it back in Taurus, our values, right? And when we look at this, 4:30 a.m. Pacific, 7:30 a.m. Eastern, the ascendant is yours. It's Taurus rising for the Gemini new moon. So it puts it in the second house. So it's literally saying, what do we value? What's coming to an end? What are we beginning? What are we letting go of to then let it come back in? Emotionally, physically, grounding towards Earth, right? What are we being introspective about? Mercury in retrograde. The degree is 9 degrees. What has been completed that now we can let go of and move on from? And so this is an interesting, and of course, being in Gemini, it's all about communication and ideas, right? Our hands. So I think that I think this is an interesting new moon to me, and it's going to set up a lot for this Sagittarius full moon coming up on what is it, the 16th? So for me, I think the intentions and the beginnings that we have to focus on are really about our speech, our words, the ideas we exchange to one another about our money, about our self-worth, about our values, about our survival. Because it's time to pay attention to those things. So this setup is not an accident. It is very squaring Mercury, not the moon, but Mercury squaring Saturn. And you could say at 4 degrees, Mars and Aries, that it's kind of like a sextile. I mean, sextiles, some people like to look at it at 3 degree orb, but it's 5 degrees. It's not terribly far away. So I don't know. How do you feel that we are supposed to bring in this new moon mentally with our words and our hands?
So for me, the new moon is it's the ending of the previous cycle, and it's not quite the beginning of the new cycle yet. So for me, the new moon, it co-responds with the bleeding phase of our moon cycle. So my view of the new moon in Gemini, it's like ending Taurus. It's ending the cycle previously, which is Taurus, and having us to release and have the contraction, just like when we're going through that bleeding phase of our moon cycle, that we're resting, that we're contracting, our body is releasing whatever didn't make the conception to fertilize our earth in our body, like what intention seeds didn't make it through the cycle, that we're able to release all of those things, clear out, and then to receive new messages. So what I look at when I'm looking at the new moon is what aspects are being made. This is going to help me to understand more about what's ending and what are the possibilities for what's being set up for the first 2 weeks of the moon cycle. So when I see that we're starting off with a Mercury retrograde, I'm still thinking that we're still like retracing our steps on what was coming up in that Mercury is with that star Algol. So where we've been severed from head, I feel like a lot of times when I lead people through meditation, either in person or on the internet, that there's this experience that happens in the head that does not include the body. So
Mm.
with that star Algol being with Mercury, it's like an animal, which we are animals, an animal in its natural habitat doesn't think with its head. It's thinking, it's perceiving sensually with all of its body. So the pores are receiving information about the temperature. We're feeling the vibration of how far away is that stampede. We're sensing energy and information holistically.
Very
And
Taurus-like, right? With your five
with
senses.
very animal like, with the five or six senses, or
Yeah.
however many senses that we are working with.
Right.
But with that Algol being there, it's really giving me this really like reminder about where have I been limiting myself just this much, and only going off what I'm able to remember from the past, what I've studied in books, what my information in my head, and severing that, because Algol has to do, Algol is a fixed star in the constellation of Medusa. The story goes into Medusa was actually a very beautiful, glorious goddess that was like captivating, and she was actually a student of Chiron. So she was a very skilled medicine woman,
Mm.
and turns into this other thing because of rape and because of persecution by the wife of the person who raped, is so much. So Medusa ends up being turned into this foul figure because of her own trauma, and because of the wounds that happened. So having Algol be in that fixed star is kind of really bringing me back to where was I misunderstood and persecuted for what they thought. That movie Maleficent, where it's showing Sleeping Beauty, but from the storyline of the evil witch or whatever, which would be Medusa in this analogy.
Right.
So hearing the story from the person who was called the witch or the whore, the evil woman, the all the things that women do get accused of regularly. Oh, well, she was a trifling this and that,
Right.
and
By the
she did
patriarchal
such and
system.
such.
Yes. Yes.
So with this Mercury retrograde lining perfectly right up at the time of the new moon, lining up with fixed star Algol, it's asking for me personally. I'm like, where can I, reconnect my memories with my physical body's wisdom and the ability to sense information with more than just my head.
Right.
And so going into the new moon with that, there's like a lot of exercises of not ignoring the mind and the memories, but more so bringing that into a whole body understanding of what am I what's living in my heart, what's living in my belly, what's the information that my legs are telling me, and just kind of bringing it all back together. Also, I'm really, really interested in Jupiter and Mars being together. So there's an emphasis on safety, violence, gun violence, weaponry. Also, with just Mars and Jupiter together in Aries, I'm looking at it from my own experiences with gun violence and with weapons. And then I'm like, okay, so safety, and what does safety really mean, and how are all of these things coming up in the news? We're seeing these things, so when we watch the news and we see stuff happening, it re-stimulates, a word I learned from Ayano, re-stimulates, or do you say triggers?
Yeah.
It brings back up information that we have experienced that leads our physical body to react or to respond in ways that it knows to respond when these things happen, when this information comes up. So I'm really looking at that, like, what is some things that we can see happening currently will continue to happen through the summer as Mars touches in with Chiron. I feel like it gets more into, for me personally, it is the anniversary of my cousin being shot with and killed with gun violence, and
Mm.
that it co-responds with that timing. So as these things come up, I'm like curious. I wonder how, because it's not just a personal thing for me, it is actually, Mars is actually making a conjunction with Chiron.
Yeah.
So where we might have some opportunity to find the medicine in the wound, or what I sometimes call the gift in the garbage, like the shit that
Like that.
happened,
Yeah.
basically, that we're able to, like, anytime I'm making medicine, there's always what you guys, when you have those pounds of cannabis, you'll call the shake. There's always something that's like, you would throw it away, but I'm like, okay, we can use this. We can use this and make some other medicine with this thing that maybe somebody thinks is trash and they're going to throw it
Right.
away.
Right.
So that's what I'm looking at for the new moon. Let me see if there's anything else on this chart that I want to mention. So we got that.
Well,
Wow.
you know what's so fascinating too, Anthony, when you were saying that, it was like you were literally describing the Mercury in retrograde in Taurus. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's what's so deep about this. That, I mean, especially since it's, it goes direct. I think June 5th or 6th. Um, so I think also people need to kind of just chill. Let Mercury go direct before you initiate contracts, deals, negotiations, different things, maybe deeper conversations you might want to have with a spouse or a loved one or someone you're dating or whatever. I think that, like you're saying, with the Taurus and the body and feeling it, and it correlates with the whole lunar eclipse and solar eclipse and that North Node in Taurus. I think that we need to kind of use those senses and use our body to kind of feel things and kind of close this and turn this off a little bit and kind of just feel the room, feel the nature, feel the energy, feel our bodies. Let's not Gemini, blah, 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 like I say with the term of endearment, you guys, verbal slut. Let's not be the verbal slut and just chill, just pause, just wait, don't react. And I think that can kind of calm down some of this Mars and Aries energy too. We just give it a moment, give it a beat, and really feel the energy. Because there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. And things are going to get better eventually, but it's going to get worse before it gets better.
So the thing is, Mars and Jupiter together, for me, I think, yeah, of course, when Mercury is retrograde, the regular formula is like don't X, Y, and Z. And Mercury goes direct on the 3rd, but we'll still be in that shadow phase until I think it's the end of June. So it's going to be a while that we're still in that. So with 26 degrees Taurus, it's got to go all the way over back to
Gemini.
4 degrees of Gemini, and then that's when we're out of the shadow phase. So we're
Right.
still kind of like in that territory of integrating what came up. Like, what was it that you were given, the task that you were given to do, or the paperwork you need to go back and check, or like what was it that came up
Right.
now during the shadow phase? That's when we start to do the things. And then this thing about Jupiter and Mars, to me, because of where it is on my chart, for
Right.
me, it's like go. It is a go. It is a like put your memories and your thought into your body, get your body up into your brain. It's not cut it off. This cut off is like a moment of like, where am I cut off? And then how can I together and get myself where my thoughts, what's in my heart and what's in my body are all aligned, and I got to go. Because this energy of Mars and Jupiter together is a very big push forward.
Yeah.
And my thing all the time when also because my Mercury is right there in the beginning of Aries, so it's
Yes.
like course correct. You can course correct later. You do need to go put the thing in action, do the things, and then course correct later, because
Right.
this big energy with Jupiter is helpful for us to get stuff started.
Yes. To initiate and make things happen. Yes.
Irene said, me too. I'm hyped, need clarity, and got to go carve out with a sword of Aries fire. So hype and need clarity. That's what sticks out. Hype and need clarity.
I
So the
like
clarity, I believe, will be coming more clearly. Like we'll have more clarity June 3rd when Mercury goes direct, that we'll start to have more of that clarity will start coming. And
right.
I'm feeling it now. Like things are starting I'm like, oh, like one thing, you guys, if whoever is still on here, we've been going for a while now, but one thing is go back and look at your and see the last time Mars was in, sorry, not Mars, Jupiter was in Aries, and just see what was happening in your life
2010 and
at
early
that time.
2011. Yeah.
Because whatever was going on in your life around that time is going to be something like this is a continuation, or like the next level of what was going on 12 years ago. So what does this mean? What are you talking about? Somatics. Oh, I know what you're talking about, Ayana, with the somatics is bringing back together the head and your body, and where I think that might be what you're talking about there. Um, so yeah, look back at your chart, see what was going on. I wanted to mention that I did it for myself, went back to Jupiter from when Jupiter was in Aries 12 years ago. I was going through this school, International School of Healing Arts, with
Hmm.
my mentor named Seymour Coblin. And I had this great, wonderful experience with him that I never forgot. He was such a good mentor, and it really like turned on my intuition.
That's awesome.
And Chiron was transiting Pisces at that time too. So I was going through a thing, and he just came back into my life at the same time Jupiter went back into Aries. So when I looked at that, and now we're working together.
That's
So
deep.
when I saw that, it was like, wow. So you guys really go back and see what was happening and see how that can be continued. Like whatever work was going on, what things you were doing, there can be like a next level of that.
Well, let me tell you, I hope it's not the next level for me, because I fractured my tib and fib in my right ankle. And then lately, I just started a couple of weeks ago having pain in my right foot and my heel.
Well,
So
it is. How is it not?
I'm just like, oh my God. And I just had to laugh, and I'm like, really? But I also know that it's like that initiative to really get back to that healing energy, for me, for Mars and Jupiter and Aries. and to continue that process of initiating, not just for exercise and health, but just initiating also in service. How can I be more of service to people? And the Jupiter, it's like bringing that that wisdom, bringing that and sharing it, in a more assertive, initiating way, and I'm actually designing like a course right now. So I think that that's really a good vehicle for me. And then also writing, I'm writing a book. So that's the Jupiter, Aries, and Mars for me. So
Yeah, so you guys look at what house it's in, because that's what Eric is talking about, is like it's in his sixth house. So Jupiter is going to be something that is elevating you and somehow related to your, like I mentioned with my teacher and my mentor, who he's teaching me things, and it's igniting my inner teacher. So there's an elevation of consciousness and expansion of my philosophies. That's Jupiter. So Jupiter will be doing that for you in your life somewhere, expanding, bringing good fortune, bringing abundance of insight and intellectual food, intellectual riches.
don't
Uh,
tell me your teacher's from a foreign land. They're not
he
really.
is actually, he lives in
Well,
Prague.
and there you go, 12th house.
Yeah, exactly. And he's a very strange, like very mysterious. It's so perfect. But so you want to look at your house, because that's going to be what area of life that this is going to be impacting. So let's see.
Can't make this stuff up,
I'm
man.
trying to think these people here who I have, so I can just tell them quickly about where that is in their chart. I do have some of these people's charts here. I have Ayano and Aries. Oh, right. So your Chiron and your moon are there, and it's your 11th house. So the 11th house has to do with goals, dreams, aspirations, but it's like the people who share
Groups.
those, we would call it like-minded people who share the same goals and dreams. It's like, who are you in that community of those people who share the same dreams as you? And then with Jupiter coming, it comes and it like kind of like ignites your inner guru in that community that you are like-minded with. And then Mars being in that 11th house also puts, I see this as like an athletic movement, or like almost like a competition with those people, whether
Yeah.
that is through academic competition, because in our like-minded groups of people in our community that we are like-minded with, it can be very healthy. Like in Tantra yoga, there's always this ongoing debate between the tantrikas, which furthers the teachings. So if we don't ever compete with each other and challenge each other, like, hey, well, Eric, I don't really see Chiron like that. Well, he's like, well, I see Chiron this way. If we don't have these competitive, because that's Aries, that's
Yeah.
Mars moving in
And you
that
don't, then you can't
with
grow.
Jupiter, then yeah, then there is no chance that those topics will ever do anything. They will just be, you'll be stagnant in that.
But let me say this too for her, because Mars in the 11th house is a great placement for
Him,
making
him.
connect. Oh, him make a great connection for him in terms of connecting with people to further his hopes, wishes, and gains and group. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
Mars in the 11th house can be networking with friends, initiating that nonprofit. Meeting the right person at this event or party to further and extend and bring fortune, Jupiter, to your career as well too. So it could be really dope in the 11th house, especially the Mars in the 11th house.
Right. And that's going over his Chiron and moon.
And you could also have some fake friends showing their butt off and acting a fool, and you got to cut them out your life. I'm just saying.
And then this one, 10th house. So Irene has Aries in the 10th. So that means that Jupiter and Mars are moving through her 10th, which is that also midheaven. 10th conjunct. Okay, so yeah, midheaven,
Yeah.
and there's Juno. Seem like there's a lot of stuff there. She's telling us,
Might be a good time for Irene to start her own business.
right,
Go be the boss, Irene.
right. I also see the mentor coming in, the somebody to teach you about that, because as we're mentioning with Jupiter
Yeah.
and Aries rushing through, Jupiter can be a book that you open. It can be a person that teaches you. It can be a mentor who guides you in that thing. You can't really just go start a business without having some type of philosophical expansion of for yourself that
Yeah.
helps you to really get that into movement.
Yeah.
MC is trine to Jupiter. Yeah, so all right. Well, that's good. I think an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Well,
This
thank
was fun.
everybody.
Thank
Hmm?
everybody for watching, and thank you. I said this was fun. I said thank you for having me on your channel. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing so much. I was like, give us it in 5 minutes. This is what I started with. Can you tell us in 5 minutes what your Chiron, And then it
Oh
was
boy,
like 20 minutes later, I was just like, oh God, we're never going to talk about this new moon.
that's all right. Because
But
you know
I'm
what,
so
I think.
thankful that you shared that.
Well, you know what, and I think it's everyone needs to kind of sometimes hear personal Chiron stories. I
Hmm.
think the way you laid it out, it took it from that wound of six, and like you said, the square, and then taking it to the return. And
Hmm.
that's an actual teachable lesson and sharing of knowledge and wisdom in a very
Hmm.
practical sense through
Hmm.
a person's life. And I think sometimes as astrologers and just as human beings, we talk about astrology in these general terms. But when you actually dig into a person's chart and life, it makes it so juicy and tangible. And it's really where you see it in living color and action.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to be a part of that with you, and that I
Mhm.
hope that it gives something to Anayu and Irene and whoever else that watches this on the replay.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
know what though? Really, I think that it's kind of this big blob, the Chiron thing, until you really pinpoint those timings. Because then when you got those timings, like, okay, the first square was this year, and I know that this thing happened, and then you put it all together and you can see the thread. So what I've been able to do with Chiron, I wrote a book about specific about Chiron. I have this whole workshop, a course that's available that you can get just on Chiron,
Mm.
and you put together these pieces and you can get, like, I will tell you that, like, the thing that I have people do is to make a sort of tagline that sort
Okay.
of in a way sums up the wound and the medicine
Ah.
based off of where is it, what were those topics that get all united when you bring them all together, except for, you won't be able to bring that fourth piece in until you have your Chiron return between 48 and 50. But if you've done this work of piecing it all together, by the time you get to the Chiron return, you can start doing the work now, because it is about digesting wounds. And so by the time you get to that Chiron return, you've been doing your work, you're ready for it, and there's no really being ready for it, because just like a Pluto initiation, they're
Woo.
here to sweep us off our feet for a
Ugh.
purpose. It's not like you can actually think your way out of it just because we're using astrology. That's not what this is for. It's so that you're like, "Oh, this is what's happening, and these are the things that are going to help me to work with this energy." We're not getting away from it. Don't even try to think about getting away from it.
Let me tell you something. My Chiron return made my Saturn return look like Frosted Flakes. Please, it's like, oh my God, Saturn return is nothing, y'all.
Yeah, seriously, I agree
Oh,
with you 100%. Yeah, so I think when I was on my run today, what I want to do is offer something, but it'll be, I'm going to have to tell you what it is in the little community thing on YouTube. I found that I can put something up there every day. I've been putting the astrology there. So check maybe tonight or tomorrow. There'll be something free. It might be either just my Chiron book that you can get it for free, the manuscript version of it. There'll be something there so you can start working with your Chiron, because this year and next year, Chiron is going to be majorly activated right now by Mars and then a little bit by Jupiter. But then next year, when Jupiter goes retrograde and then comes back, and it's going to go back through, but it's within 10 degrees. So we are going to be feeling and working with Chiron topics.
Quick question on Janae, because I
Hmm.
don't remember off the top of my head. Is Chiron like a 7-year cycle? How long is Chiron?
Nope. There's no, it's so elliptical that we can't track it. We can't say it's 7 years, it's 16 years. It is all over the place. The only
Okay.
thing that is trackable is that 50 year. Everybody has it at 50, but between 0 and 50, it's literally just all over the place.
Okay, that's what I was trying to remember. I couldn't pinpoint it, and that explains why. Because certain things you just know, like, oh, Mars 27, Saturn 28 and a half. Like, yeah, but yeah, I couldn't remember with the Chiron. But one quick thing before we go, one thing that I found fascinating, you had a lot of assassination attempts when Chiron was in Aries in the mid to late 60s, going into the early 70s.
Wow.
And so that's one thing that I found pretty fascinating. So
Well, that's exactly what I was saying when I was asking you earlier, and because Mars,
yeah,
Jupiter approaching Chiron. The
yeah,
only thing I can think of, which one, like, give me something else. All I can see, and I know because my own wounds with the violence and guns, and what I'm seeing on the news currently as
no, I
becoming a
know,
bigger issue, I'm like, what else could it possibly be? And how can we be proactive instead of reactive? So I'm like, I've been on the verge of going to get my own gun and go through the gun safety class and like learn. I've shot, because I was in the military, I do know how to hold a gun, and I've shot a gun, but I don't own one. And now I'm like, okay, maybe this is the time to get one and to have the kids also go through this. There's a teacher, Ayano introduced him to me, Trayvon, I can't remember his name, but his project is called Black Guns Matter, and he
mm,
goes through and teaches people gun safety, gun laws, gun everything you need to know, what are the rules in your
right. There
community.
are black gun groups. Yeah, yeah,
So that is something that I'm looking at for our household, just to get educated on it and to take away some of the fear and
yeah,
some of the anxiety around the topic. Just go get the education, do
right.
the things we need to do, have a
Especially
little
around
law.
children, you need education with guns around children.
Right. With anybody, honestly,
Well,
because
no, I mean, no,
I
I'm
have
just saying because we're both
teenagers.
parents.
Yeah.
I'm only saying that because we're both parents. But yes, no, and I've definitely shot a bunch of different guns, and I think education is definitely
This next thing I saw in the news was after the shooting happened, there's another one that was like, oh, this shooting happened and a woman pulls her gun out and shoots the shooter. End of story. The shooting is over. And I was like, this is where we're going. I think, like, we need to start thinking a little bit beyond what we're expecting this system to protect us, and they're not. So there's this place in me that's like, how can we be proactive and take the actions that we need to take with this Mars Jupiter going through Aries, and be ready and also just move with it instead of trying to like dance around it, or whatever other things we can do to like not have to feel it. So yeah.
And you know what? I still cannot remember the name. In my head, I was thinking swine flu, and thinking this and that, like the mosquitoes. But it is so crazy because I'm telling you, when I was at the hospital, every other door somebody had the mosquito thing, and I was just like, wow. It was
Valley, it's not valley fever. I can't remember what the hell that.
no, it's
I
someone.
had a little phase of getting people with this, and actually, one of my friends who was going to Kauai all the time
Uh-huh.
got something, but he said his was from snails.
Oh, that's different. Yeah.
But it was a viral infection. So,
Okay.
yeah,
That's
but
deep.
there's, yeah. So, anyway, everybody, thank you all so much. We
This
could
was
be on here
great.
all day, have like a malaria. No, is that it?
No, it's not malaria.
It's
That's
not
in
malaria.
Africa, but the bugs, that's different. It's
Deer? Is it deer or something?
no, 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 no. It's oh gosh.
Text me later. I don't know. I can't think of it.
I will. I'm gonna
All
have to
right.
ask my wife, but I totally I hate when I can't remember stuff, but then it will come up. Like I'll be watching or eating dinner and I'll just be like, oh, you know. But this was great, like always. I love bonding and connecting and exchanging and sharing astrology, with you. And I thank you. And it's just been a pleasure. And I thank your audience for tolerating my long-winded answers.
No, it
I
was
can't
good.
help it. Listen, Virgo, Mercury, and Mercury 11th house. I gotta give you all the details to make you feel like you were there in the hospital bed with me. You know what I mean?
Gonna put that into a screenplay.
Yeah, basically, everything's a screenplay. My whole life's a movie, gosh. But yeah, but I'll be interested to see. We talked about it before we got on air, but off air. You, I guess, breaking down my Chiron story. I'm kind of
Yeah,
fascinated.
I'm gonna do that. I got my book. I'm gonna do it right now, and I'll send you the dates. And I swear to you, everybody who I've done this for, I'm not even kidding. They're like,
Oh
you
my
can just
goodness,
you can spell it out. Like you can literally, like when I did mine,
it blew you away, right?
same topic. It all has to do with the exact same topic at different degrees and different, like through the ages of maturity. And then it's what I struggle with the most in my life to this day. But now being able to see it as my medicine, now I'm like, oh,
Well, to me, it's so funny because I would say it's got to be around my eyes and my vision, but maybe I'll be surprised, and maybe it's around my family and parents. Who knows? I'm excited
yeah,
to see what you come up with because I mean, I went through such a run at an early age. God knows what it could be, but
right.
I think what's so great about astrology is that we can heal these wounds and we can learn so much about our inner child and about our subconscious mind and about siblings, about spouses, about just every aspect of life. And each house, tells us a great story. And
Mhm.
so, I think it's a great gift to tap into the universe and have intimate relationships with these planets and these energies. So
Mhm.
let's
Definitely.
let's continue the journey, my friend.
Yes. All right. Well, I'll see you all pretty soon because I'm jumping on to do a
All right.
little meditation for the new moon tonight. So
There you go.
if you don't see it, don't worry. It'll be up and you can jump
Well, where
in.
do you do that? Do you do that on Telegram or you do it here?
I'm gonna do it here on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna check in with my son and see. I think we're gonna go get dinner together and then jump back on here probably like in an hour and do a little guided meditation. I couldn't do it last on the eclipse because some other things came up, but it's really
Yeah,
one
because
of
I
my
was
favorite
looking for you
things.
because you had said that, and I was
Yeah,
looking.
I
I'm
was
like,
like, all right now in an hour.
see,
Pisces shit.
I was,
100% Pisces shit.
I was, I was, I was checking
I
on you,
said
but
an hour, but I really meant 2 weeks from now.
that's very Pisces. I love it. I love it. Oh my God. God bless you. That is awesome.
All
All right.
right.
Enjoy dinner, and thank you for having me on Awaken the Dream School. I appreciate it.
See
Oh,
you
and
soon.
let me tell people, please, you guys,
Right.
go check out. So my page is Tailored to You Astrology. My website is tailoredtoyoucoaching.com. and you can email me directly. Any coaching, chart services, anything. You could just email me directly at taylor2coaching@gmail.com. So thank you.
It works. He'll answer you. That's where I found him.
It does work.
All right. Well, see, if you email me, it might not work, but if you email him, it will work.
Amen. Amen. All right.
See y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.